Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside Central Health Training Center for another episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones. And coming up on today's episode, we'll have Kansas City Chiefs senior team reporter Matt McMullen join the show to take a look at this matchup from the Chiefs' perspective. All that and more coming up. Joining me on today's episode of Broncos Now to take a look at this matchup from the Chiefs' perspective is Kansas City Chiefs senior team reporter Matt McMullen. Matt, thanks for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, Sydney, anytime. Glad to be here. Excited for another AFC West showdown, our first one of the year.
I know, me too. How's it going over there? How are things in Kansas City?
It's good. The vibe is good. Of course, we had that tough one on Thursday night to open the season, but we've won 4 straight since, coming off a tough, gritty victory over the Vikings last week. So the team is looking good right now. It's a young team, still kind of finding its identity, but it's a lot easier to learn and get better when you're winning football games. And that's what's going on right now here in Kansas City.
For sure. I mean, you mentioned it. The Chiefs are heading into this matchup on a 4-game win streak. And I know, the Chiefs have been in some close games the past couple weeks. So, Matt, I guess what's just been your evaluation of the team so far to start this season?
Yeah, there have been some close games, but the beauty of this team is they've found ways to win. And there was the Bears game a couple weeks ago. We won that game by a significant margin. The game was really never in doubt. But in week 2 against Jacksonville, that was a close game. Last week against the Vikings, that was a close one. Even 2 weeks ago against the Jets, that was a close game. But in the long run, I think these things are good for the Chiefs because, as I mentioned, it's a young team. And they found ways to win those games when maybe not everything was going perfect the entire time. And I think those things will help this team later on in the season when we're hopefully playing in the playoffs and deep into the playoffs. These young players know that even if they're facing some adversity, they can find a way to win the game in the end. And that's really been the hallmark of this team so far, is they've found a way consistently.
Well, excited for this Thursday night matchup. First primetime game of the season for the Broncos. Over there in Kansas City, Matt, what is the team kind of saying about this quick turnaround for you guys? Of course, a short week here.
Yeah, well, it's tough. These Thursday night football games are tough. It's particularly tough for you guys having to travel. The Chiefs are fortunate that they're at home for this game. But one of the great things about Coach Andy Reid is he devotes entire OTA practices way back in May to divisional opponents. So when we saw that the Broncos were our Thursday night game this year, I thought that was an advantage in some ways for the Chiefs because these are games they're preparing for months and months ago. And of course, there's only so much you can really do in May and in June. But if you get the players already thinking about, Russell Wilson and Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and how do you move the ball against these guys and vice versa, that muscle memory comes into play, I think, on a short week like this. So it's tough. There's only essentially 1 day of practice, but I think those days back in May will help the Chiefs here in this game.
Definitely, yeah. I know it's still early in the week, but what do you feel like's been the main talking point or the main topic of conversation over there as you guys are heading into this matchup versus the Broncos?
I think it's the growth of our young receivers on one end. The Chiefs have had some turnover at receiver, but we're seeing some good things from these young guys, particularly Rashee Rice, who was our second-round pick out of SMU in the draft a few months ago. He's really coming on, I think. He had a touchdown catch last week against the Vikings. He had a touchdown in week 1. He has 173 receiving yards this year on 17 catches. Those 17 grabs are second to only Travis Kelce. He's someone that's kind of growing into maybe the Juju Smith-Schuster mold, what we saw with him here in Kansas City. Obviously not there yet. He's a young player, and Juju was a veteran. But in terms of being a physical wide receiver who can make tough catches and then make plays after the catch, we're seeing that from Rashee Rice. And then on the defense as well, the defense has been outstanding for the Chiefs so far this year. They haven't allowed more than 20 offensive points in a game this season. They're the only team in the NFL that can say that. And of course, if the defense can play like this all year long, when Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback, you're going to have a chance to win a lot of games. So I think the growth of the defense and also our young receivers are the 2 main talking points here in town right now.
Yeah, Matt, I know Travis Kelce, he's dealing with that ankle injury, but I know he came back into the game after suffering that last week versus the Vikings. So what's the latest on him? Are they thinking he's going to play on Thursday?
He's the ultimate warrior. Incredibly came back in that game and not only came back, but made big plays. His first drive back in the game in the third quarter last week, he had 2 huge catches on 3rd down and then the touchdown catch. That's why I think he's the greatest tight end of all time, not just the stats and the numbers, but his mentality to fight through stuff. Not sure about Thursday. We'll hear from Coach Reid here in a few hours for his first media session of the week, and we'll get an update, but unknown right now.
Got it. I know the Chiefs secondary, looking at the defense here, has, done a really good job so far this season at shutting down, really some of the top receivers in the league. I know specifically last week, Justin Jefferson. So what's just, I guess, impressed you about that group that this Broncos offense needs to be on the lookout for?
Sure. Well, a couple of things. Veteran corner L'Jarius Sneed is having a really nice season. For the most part this year, he's been going up against the number one target for the opponent. Last week, that was Justin Jefferson. I think he was on him for like 50 or 60% of Jefferson's snaps. And he's been great, just a lockdown corner for the Chiefs this year. And then outside of Sneed, the Chiefs invested a ton of draft capital into their secondary last year. They drafted 5 defensive backs last year. One of them, unfortunately, tore his ACL in training camp, but the other 4 are making a huge impact this season. And the growth that we're seeing from those guys is one of the main reasons this defense has been so successful. Trent McDuffie at corner was one of our first-round picks last year. He's a top 5 corner in the NFL, if you ask me. He's having an outstanding season. You don't hear his name a lot during the games, which is a good thing. It means that the opponent isn't throwing his way. Brian Cook has been really solid for the Chiefs at safety. And then Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams are 2 young corners that kind of rotate their role in the Chiefs defense. But overall, the secondary has just been tremendous. Justin Reed also, he was a veteran that came over from the Houston Texans last year at safety. This being his second year in the system, he looks really comfortable, and he's one of the leaders of this defense. So the secondary in general, it's super young, but already, of course, they had that Super Bowl experience from last year. They're a big reason right now the Chiefs are winning so many games.
Yeah. Outside of the Broncos starting the season 1-4, I mean, Russell Wilson has put up some really good numbers throughout the first 5 weeks. I mean, some of his numbers are comparable to Patrick Mahomes. So how do you think that Chiefs defense will fare going up against him?
Yeah, he'll be a challenge. I think, everyone expected this from Russell, where last year was kind of an anomaly. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback for a reason. The one thing I'm interested to see in this game is the Broncos have been so good early on in games this season, it seems like. I think they have 27 points on opening drives this year. It's like second most in the NFL. The Chiefs haven't allowed a single point on opening drive so far this season. So something has to give in that regard. I think for the Chiefs defense to find success against the Broncos offense, which has been much better, to do so on Thursday, I think starting fast defensively is important for the Chiefs. We saw that against the Vikings last week. Minnesota has one of the better offenses in the NFL, despite their slow start. They fumbled on their very first play from scrimmage. The Chiefs got the ball in great field position after that and scored right away. And then the ball kind of got rolling for the Chiefs defense after that. I would look for a similar start, hopefully, for the Chiefs defense. Try to start fast and make sure Denver can't get off to a good start.
Yeah. Well, I know this Denver offense is looking to limit those turnovers this week. A couple more here for you, Matt. Looking at, this matchup as a whole, what do you think is the specific matchup to be on the lookout for this week?
That's a good question. I think I would say I think it's Russell Wilson against this Chiefs young secondary. I think, not to recap what we just talked about, but I think that really is the key for the game. This Chiefs defense, as I said, has grown so much between last year and this year, and they're trying to stack these games over and over. The Chiefs defense, in a lot of ways this year, has been the reason the Chiefs have won some games. And Coach Spagnuolo joked about that in years past, that the offense gets all the credit and wins all these games for the Chiefs. Yeah. He wants to be the reason the Chiefs win some of these games, because that makes you a complete team. And I think if this young defense can have a really nice day against Russell Wilson, it'll just go further in solidifying that they are a top 5 defense in the NFL. And then conversely, if Russell Wilson has a great day against this Chiefs defense, puts a lot of pressure on Kansas City. So I think that's my matchup to watch, is Russell Wilson with his young wide receivers against this young Chiefs secondary.
I like it. What's interesting is these two teams are set to face each other twice within, I believe, an 18-day span in 2 weeks. I know the Chiefs will be coming here to Denver in 2 weeks to face the Broncos again.
Yeah, it's crazy. When the schedule comes out and we see these things, didn't this happen last year?
I think so. I was just thinking that. Yeah, we kind of had back-to-back games last year as well.
Yeah, it's tough. And for the Chiefs, we play the Chargers next week. So we have 3 divisional matchups in about 17 days. Wow. It's tough. We start the season, the first 5 weeks, we don't see a single divisional opponent, and then 3 in a matter of 17 days. I think these are a big 3 games for the Chiefs to try to take another step toward an 8th straight division title. You got to win these division games to really set the tone for the rest of the year. And it begins here on Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Matt, appreciate your insight on the team. I will see you on Thursday night.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Be ready for some barbecue.
Oh, I'm ready. Matt, appreciate you joining the show today.
No problem.
Well, that'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now, Broncos Country. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube tomorrow for a game preview. I'll see you all then.